The impossible envoy. The alert klaxons echoed through the vast command center of the Relian Imperial flagship Dominance. Supreme Commander Zath Theron stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, all 6 eyes fixed on the massive holographic display, showing the defensive formation of 5,000 warships, the largest gathering of military might in the history of the 7 systems. "Status report," Zath Theron demanded, his voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center. First Officer Krell approached with a formal bow. "Supreme Commander, our long-range sensors confirm human vessels will emerge from slip space within the hour. All defense systems are at full capacity, and planetary shields are at maximum." Zath Theron nodded. Intelligence reports had been clear. After the Relian Empire's annexation of the Proxima colonies and the subsequent failed negotiations, the humans had finally committed to all-out war. The Relian spy network had intercepted communications indicating a massive fleet was en route to the Relian homeworld itself. A bold, perhaps desperate move by the Earth Coalition. "They think to intimidate us by striking at our heart," Zath Theron said to his assembled high command. "Instead, they deliver their fleet into our waiting embrace." The Second Empire of Relia had conquered 11 species across 17 star systems in the past century. Humans would simply be the 12th. Their technology was inferior, their military smaller. Their only advantages were their unpredictability and their strange, almost illogical tenacity. Traits that had earned them a reputation as dangerous adversaries, but would not save them today. "Slip space rupture detected," announced the sensor officer, her voice tight with anticipation. The command center fell silent. 5,000 ships waited, weapon systems humming at full charge. A small tear appeared in the fabric of space, a blue-white vortex swirling against the blackness. Zath Theron leaned forward, expecting to see dozens, perhaps hundreds of human warships pouring through. Instead, a single vessel emerged. "Where is the rest of their fleet?" Zath Theron demanded. First Officer Krell frantically checked the sensor readings. "There's nothing else, Supreme Commander, just the one ship." The vessel was sleek and smaller than their heavy cruisers, with strange geometric patterns etched into its dark hull that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. It bore the insignia of the Earth Coalition Space Force, the ECSF Prometheus. "Receiving transmission," the communications officer announced. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a human female in a midnight blue uniform adorned with silver insignia. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the ECSF Prometheus. I request immediate diplomatic contact with Supreme Commander Zath Theron of the Relian Empire." Zath Theron stared in disbelief. Intelligence had expected the entire Earth Coalition fleet, over 300 vessels, but a single human ship had appeared. The command center erupted in hushed whispers until Zath Theron raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "Is this some kind of trick?" he asked, turning to his intelligence officer. Officer Mrev shook his head. "Our scans detect no other vessels in the vicinity, Supreme Commander. No unusual energy signatures that might indicate cloaked ships. It appears to be truly alone." Zath Theron studied the image of the human captain. Her dark eyes showed no fear, only a steady resolve that unsettled him. This made no sense. The humans knew the Relian military strength. To send a lone ship was beyond foolish, it was suicidal. "Put me through," Zath Theron ordered. The communication officer nodded. "Captain Vasquez," Zath Theron began, keeping his voice steady. "This is Supreme Commander Zath Theron of the Imperial Relian Forces. Your request for diplomatic contact is unexpected, but not unwelcome, I hope," replied Vasquez with a slight smile. "The matters we need to discuss are of the utmost importance to both our peoples." "Where is the human fleet, Captain?" Zath Theron asked directly. "Our intelligence indicated a substantial force." "I am the human fleet, Commander," Vasquez said simply. Laughter rippled through the command center before Zath Theron silenced it with a glare. "You expect me to believe Earth sent a single ship to confront the might of the Relian Empire?" he asked. I don't expect you to believe anything without evidence, Vasquez replied, which is why I request a face-to-face meeting. Some things must be seen to be understood. Zatharin muted the transmission and turned to his advisors. Opinions. It's clearly a trap, said First Officer Krell. The humans must have developed some new stealth technology. Their fleet could be surrounding us now. Our sensors would detect something, countered Officer Mrev. No cloaking technology is perfect. Perhaps they're buying time, suggested Admiral Tosh, delaying while their real fleet assembles elsewhere. Zatharin considered these possibilities. None seemed entirely satisfactory. He unmuted the transmission. Captain Vasquez, you arrive in Relian space uninvited, at a time when our governments have declared a state of war and expect diplomatic treatment. If war was our intention, Commander, Vasquez replied, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The Prometheus comes with the authority to negotiate terms that would benefit both humanity and the Relian Empire. One ship cannot dictate terms to the Relian Empire, Zatharin said firmly. Vasquez's expression remained unchanged. With respect, Commander, you don't yet understand what one ship can do. There was something in her tone that gave Zatharin pause. Not a threat, exactly, but an absolute certainty that sent an involuntary shiver down his spine. You have one standard rotation to present your case directly to me, Zatharin decided. Then I will determine if this matter warrants the attention of the Imperial Council. Thank you, Commander. I look forward to our meeting. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Order a detailed scan of that vessel, Zatharin commanded. I want to know everything about it. Power readings, weapon systems, unusual technology, and maintain battle readiness. As his crew rushed to obey, Zatharin studied the image of the lone human ship floating against the backdrop of stars. It seemed almost fragile compared to the massive Relian warships surrounding it. What game are you playing, Captain Vasquez? He muttered. 6 hours later, Zatharin sat in his private conference chamber aboard the Dominance. The door slid open, and 2 security officers escorted Captain Vasquez inside. In person, she was shorter than he expected, but carried herself with unmistakable authority. Captain, Zatharin greeted her with a formal nod. Commander, she returned the gesture. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I'm curious, Zatharin admitted as they sat down. Our scans show your ship is armed, but not heavily. You carry no planet-destroying weapons, no massive arsenal, yet you face the combined might of the Relian Empire without apparent concern. Not all power is measured in firepower, Commander. Then how is it measured, Captain? Vasquez placed a small device on the table between them. It projected a hologram of a star system, the Relian home system. 3 days ago, we placed quantum observation devices throughout your system, she explained. They're undetectable by your technology. Zatharin's expression darkened. Spying is hardly a basis for negotiation. Not spying, Vasquez corrected. Insurance. She touched the device, and the hologram changed to show what looked like technical schematics. These devices can alter the quantum state of matter within a defined radius, Vasquez continued. A demonstration might help you understand. She gestured to her security escort. After a nod from Zatharin, the officer handed her a metal cup from a nearby table. Vasquez placed it beside the hologram device and pressed a sequence. The cup shimmered for a brief moment, then collapsed in on itself, leaving only a fine dust on the table. Zatharin couldn't hide his shock. What did you do? Changed the quantum binding properties of the metal, Vasquez explained calmly. The devices throughout your system can do this on a planetary scale. Silence filled the room as the implication sank in. This is why one ship is sufficient, Commander. The Prometheus doesn't need to outgun your fleet. We simply need to deliver our message. War between our peoples would result in mutual destruction. Zatharin stared at the dust that had once been a solid metal cup. His 4 hands clenched and unclenched as he processed this information. The Imperial Council will see you now, Captain Vasquez, he said quietly. Elena Vasquez stood in her quarters aboard the Prometheus, gazing at her reflection in the small mirror. Dark circles underlined her eyes, the result of too many sleepless nights since receiving her orders. "Computer, playback Earth Command's final transmission," she said. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Admiral Chen's stern face. "Captain Vasquez, the situation has deteriorated beyond peaceful resolution. The Relian Empire will not recognize our sovereignty over the Proxima colonies, and our intelligence indicates they're preparing for a full-scale invasion. We cannot match their numbers in conventional warfare." Vasquez mouthed the words along with the recording, having memorized them over countless viewings. "The Prometheus is our only hope. Project Quantum Veil is now operational. You are to proceed alone to the Relian homeworld and convince them that further aggression would be unwise." The message ended as it always did, with the Admiral's grim expression and final words. "The fate of humanity rests with you, Captain. Good luck." A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, the Relian representatives have arrived in the communication chamber," announced Lieutenant Rivera. Vasquez straightened her uniform. "Very well. Let's see if they're willing to listen to reason." As she walked through the corridors of her ship, she felt the weight of her mission pressing down on her shoulders. The Prometheus carried a crew of only 35. A skeleton crew for a vessel of its size, each member selected for their expertise and discretion. They all knew the risks when they volunteered. What the Relians didn't know, what they couldn't know, was how desperate Earth's gambit truly was. The price of peace. The communication chamber filled with the holographic projections of 5 Relian officials, their tall forms towering over Vasquez even in virtual form. "This is highly irregular," stated the central figure. "I am High Chancellor Vexmore. Explain the meaning of this solitary incursion." "High Chancellor," Vasquez replied with a formal bow, "I come representing the Earth Coalition. I'm authorized to negotiate terms that will prevent unnecessary bloodshed." "Negotiate?" Vexmore's translator conveyed his incredulity. "With one ship? Perhaps humans do not understand the concept of war." Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. "I believe it's the Relian Empire that has misunderstood. Allow me to clarify our position." Over the next hour, Vasquez presented evidence of the quantum devices placed throughout Relian space, explaining their capabilities in clinical detail. When she finished, the Relians exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. "You threaten to destroy our worlds if we continue our rightful expansion," demanded one of the officials, Admiral Krex, head of the Imperial fleet. "Not a threat," Vasquez countered. "A reality. The devices are already in place. If the Relian Empire attacks Earth or any human colony, they will activate automatically. Your homeworld and 11 other key systems will cease to exist." "This is preposterous," Krex sputtered. "No such technology exists. Supreme Commander Zatherin has seen a demonstration," Vasquez replied calmly. "But if the Council requires more convincing, we can arrange something more substantial." High Chancellor Vexmore raised a hand for silence. "If what you claim is true, your actions amount to extortion on a galactic scale." "We prefer to think of it as mutually assured deterrence," Vasquez corrected. "Similar to the nuclear stalemate that prevented global war on Earth for centuries. We have no desire to use these devices, only to ensure they never need to be used." After the communication ended, Vasquez returned to her quarters. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured herself a glass of water. Lieutenant Rivera knocked on her door. "Captain, do you have a moment?" "Enter." Rivera stepped inside, holding a datapad. At 29, he was 7 years younger than Vasquez, but his eyes held the same weariness. "The Relian Council has agreed to formal talks tomorrow," he reported. "They're still scanning us continuously." "Let them scan," Vasquez replied. "They won't find anything they can understand." Rivera nodded but didn't leave. "The crew is asking questions, Captain. They know we're the only ship facing thousands. They're wondering if this is a suicide mission. Tell them the truth, Rivera. Our mission is to prevent a war, not start one. But if we fail— I understand, Rivera said quietly. After he left, Vasquez opened a hidden compartment in her desk. Inside was a small black cube, the control key for Project Quantum Veil. She turned it over in her hands, feeling its smooth surface. What the Relians didn't know, what her own crew didn't fully understand, was that Earth had managed to create only 3 functional quantum devices. The rest were elaborate bluffs. If the Relians called their hand, humanity would still face annihilation. In the Relian Imperial Palace, a heated debate was underway. We should strike now, before they can deploy more of these weapons, insisted Admiral Krex. Our combined fleet can destroy 1 ship, no matter how advanced, and risk 12 of our worlds, countered Minister Lox, the civilian head of Relian science. The human colonies aren't worth such a price. If they even have such devices, said Krex, this could be an elaborate bluff. Do you want to take that chance? Asked High Chancellor Vexmore. Even one such device deployed against our homeworld would be catastrophic. Supreme Commander Zath Varen had been quiet, studying the sensor data from his meeting with Vasquez. Now he spoke. The quantum principles the human captain described are theoretically sound, he said. Our own scientists have explored similar concepts but deemed them impractical. If the humans have overcome the technical challenges, so we capitulate to these hairless apes. Krex's voice dripped with contempt. The empire that conquered the 7 systems, brought to heel by a single ship. Not capitulation, said Vexmore thoughtfully. Adaptation. The humans have changed the parameters of conflict. We must change our approach accordingly. Back on the Prometheus, Vasquez prepared for her final meeting with the Relian Council. The fate of humanity hinged on her ability to convince them that peace was the only rational choice. Captain, Chief Science Officer Taylor approached her in the corridor. I've completed the analysis of their scanning attempts. And they're getting closer to understanding our quantum signature, Taylor said, her voice low. I estimate they'll be able to detect the true nature of our devices within 72 hours. Vasquez nodded. Then we need to conclude these negotiations within 48. Thank you, Doctor. In her mind, she could hear Admiral Chen's voice. The fate of humanity rests with you, Captain. The next morning, Vasquez stood before the physically assembled Relian Council in their grand chamber, a concession that suggested they were taking her seriously. The Earth Coalition proposes the following terms, she began. The Relian Empire will withdraw from the Proxima colonies and recognize them as sovereign human territory. In exchange, we will share limited aspects of our quantum technology for peaceful applications only. Admiral Krex laughed, a harsh barking sound. You dictate terms to us. The Proxima system has been rightfully claimed for the Empire. The Proxima colonies were established by humans 30 years before Relian scouts ever entered the system. Vasquez countered. Your claim is based solely on military might, not right. And now your claim is based on the threat of these quantum devices, said Minister Lox. How are you any different? Because we're not seeking expansion, Vasquez replied. Only recognition of what is already ours. The difference, Minister, is that we want peace. You want submission. High Chancellor Vexmore leaned forward. And if we reject these terms? Vasquez met his gaze steadily. Then I return to Earth, and what happens next will be determined by your actions. If you move against any human world, the devices activate. It's that simple. Simple, but perhaps short-sighted, said a new voice. Vasquez turned to see Supreme Commander Zath Varen entering the chamber. Captain Vasquez, you've demonstrated that humans possess remarkable technological innovation, he said. What you haven't considered is what might be possible if our peoples collaborated rather than threatened one another. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Collaboration. Your empire has a history of subjugating species, not collaborating with them. Because none have demonstrated capabilities worthy of true partnership, Zath Varen replied. Until now. The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words settled over the gathering. "What exactly are you proposing, Commander?" Vasquez asked carefully. "An alliance," Zathvarin said simply. "The Relian Empire recognizes human sovereignty over the Proxima colonies and any other currently established human worlds. In exchange, we forge a mutual defense pact and scientific exchange program." Admiral Krex rose from his seat. "This is outrageous. The Empire does not form alliances with lesser species. The humans have proven they are not lesser," Zathvarin replied calmly. "They brought one ship to our homeworld and forced us to negotiate. Imagine what our civilizations might accomplish together instead of in opposition." High Chancellor Vexmore studied Vasquez thoughtfully. "Is such an arrangement within your authority to negotiate, Captain?" It wasn't. Her orders had been clear: secure recognition of human territory, establish deterrence, and return home. An alliance had never been contemplated, but Vasquez saw the opportunity for something more valuable than mere deterrence. "I believe the coalition would be open to discussions along these lines," she said carefully, "provided certain safeguards were established." As the details were hammered out over the next 2 days, Vasquez maintained her composure, never revealing the tremendous pressure she felt. Chief Science Officer Taylor kept her updated on the Relian scanning progress. They were getting closer to discovering the truth about the quantum devices. On the final day, as the treaty was prepared for signing, Supreme Commander Zathvarin requested a private word with her. "Your bluff was masterful, Captain," he said once they were alone. Vasquez kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you mean, Commander." "Your quantum devices," Zathvarin said with a slight smile. "Our scientists have determined that while the technology is real, you couldn't possibly have deployed it as widely as you claimed. I suspect you have very few functional devices, perhaps only the one you demonstrated to me." Vasquez remained silent, neither confirming nor denying his assertion. "Don't worry," Zathvarin continued. "I haven't shared this with the Council. The alliance is too valuable to jeopardize over such details." "Why tell me this?" Vasquez asked. "Because I want you to understand something, Captain. This alliance isn't being formed because we fear your weapons. It's because you've demonstrated qualities the Relian Empire respects: ingenuity, boldness, and the willingness to take enormous risks for your people." He paused. "One ship against an empire. It's either the act of a fool or a visionary. Sometimes the line between the two is very thin," Vasquez replied. "Indeed." Zathvarin extended one of his 4 hands. "To a successful alliance, Captain Vasquez." She took his hand, feeling the strange texture of his alien skin. "To peace, Commander Zathvarin." 3 days later, the Prometheus prepared to depart Relian space. The treaty had been signed, establishing the Human-Relian Accord, the first equal partnership the Empire had ever formed with another species. On the bridge, Lieutenant Rivera approached Vasquez's command chair. "Course laid in for Earth, Captain. We can slit space jump when ready." Vasquez nodded. "Lieutenant, when we return, don't be surprised if our reception is mixed. Some will call this a triumph, others a compromise." "And what will you call it, Captain?" Vasquez looked at the view screen, where the massive Relian homeworld hung against the blackness of space. "A beginning," she said. "Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from having the largest army, but from changing the rules of engagement entirely." As the Prometheus entered slip space, leaving the Relian system behind, Vasquez allowed herself to relax for the first time in weeks. Humanity had secured not just its survival, but a future with new possibilities. They had expected an army, but a single ship had changed everything.